Hello and welcome to the second episode of the NewIn Podcast. I'm Cathi Harrison and I am on a mission to improve financial services, and this podcast is a part of that. In order that you can get to know me bit by bit, each episode I am sharing an interesting fact with you, just a little bit of information to help you get to know who I am. Today's fact is actually more of a confession. So I've actually twice moved my ISA and pension investments into cash in the last 12 months, despite knowing just how dreadful that is from an advice perspective. I know, it's awful. What can I say? Just emotions get the best of us all, and at least you know me a little bit better now. So as a reminder, we're alternating episodes. Episode 1 was an interview with a student, somebody who's newly come into finance, and today we're focusing on an advisor, the lovely Tony, that has come through one of our incubator programs. So we're going to dive on in, and I wanted to start with introducing the other of my wonderful co-hosts, Hannah Pendlebury. Hannah has actually been through an incubator program herself, so has amazing experience to be able to interview others that are on that same journey. Coming up will be Hannah's interview with Tony, but first of all, let's find out a little bit more about Hannah, her journey, and why she wanted to be part of this podcast. So hi Hannah, welcome to our NewIn Podcast. How excited are you to be part of it?
Oh, I'm mega excited.
So excited.
Cannot wait.
Do you know how excited you are? I realise I've got my foundation coloured background and you've got foundation coloured top on, so we're like fully coordinated.
We did not plan this. This is just the universe.
So just to start and introduce a little bit about why you are a co-host on the NewIn Podcast, and you're going to kind of help me do some of the interviews. Do you want to give people a little bit of your background and kind of your journey as an advisor and then where you are now?
I actually really wanted to be a broadcast journalist, and then a family connection, basically, who owns his own practice, said, "Honey, I think you make a really good IFA. Do you want to come and see what we do?" So I shadowed for 2 weeks and thought, this is a really brilliant blend of all of the various interests that I have. I've always been a bit of a numbers girl, but I love people, love interacting with them. I got trained up there. The plan was just to take my ROs and then just be launched on the public. I ended up going through sort of a bit more of the traditional back office admin support, became a bit of a paraplanner. And then I advised there for just about 6 years, absolutely loved it. And then became a runaway IFA after the pandemic. I basically got a couple of opportunities fall into my lap. And so I spent about 3 years, it was supposed to be 1 year, ended up being 3, as a professional sports commentator, pretty much full time. So that's where I ran away to. And now my plan is I'm setting up on my own from scratch as an advisor again.
Yeah. So I was going to say, when you first said wanted to be a broadcast journalist, but you didn't want to compromise on the sporting part of it, like that kind of Venn overlap of them two doesn't naturally end up in financial services. So what was it that had kind of did appeal to you that wasn't completely directly linked to what you were enjoying before and you've enjoyed since?
Yeah, I think as a human being, I really enjoy helping people and feeling useful. I don't think that's a particularly unusual quality. I think, I nearly went and did engineering at university. I actually ended up doing architecture and ending up with a degree in the history and philosophy of art. That interested me about financial services and financial planning in particular is that it is very human coded. It's really kind of the ins and outs of people's lives that I find super interesting. Sometimes people look at financial services and they think, oh, it's got to be the optimum portfolio, it's got to get the best results out of it. And I think sometimes clients come in with the expectation that it's going to be the most optimal thing it can be. But I think actually financial planning is brilliant because it's not about optimization. It's about finding the right balance for people. So you go through different seasons of life with people. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. And I think for people who haven't yet considered a career in finance, that's maybe the stuff that we know is phenomenal about finance and is what makes it such an interesting career. But if you're not already in finance, you just don't know that that's like the case. You don't know that's the angle. The other thing I always say is amazing about finance, like you can come in, you can go to a huge company, work through a massive academy, you can go to a smaller company and kind of work your way through. You could be the kind of person who thrives in an employed role and in that kind of structure, but you can be the kind of person who's a bit more entrepreneurial and a bit more spicy and actually wants to kind of do their own thing. And again, finance is just phenomenal and being able to kind of accommodate all of those different types. And so do you want to talk through a little bit for you moving from employed via sports journalism into starting your own thing?
So coming back in, have to say, if I could go back to myself, I would try and not lose caste status. That was a big sort of hurdle in terms of my options coming back in. The plan, touch wood, is to set up an RI within the network. Sort of that would be then launching into my formal own business, hopefully with a couple of clients behind me. And then my kind of niche, what I really want to do with my business is to actually start looking at avenues of how we can support people that are neurodiverse within financial planning, whether that's specific services, and if it really does have teeth and the research element all goes well, maybe even partnering with product providers to actually create specific products that cater to the needs of people with different kinds of neurodiversity. Because I think there are so many folks that, even if they want to engage with financial planning, the way their wiring is being a little bit different, maybe that stops them from approaching services, which is one sort of hurdle, and maybe it actually stops them from having as good an experience with financial planning practices as they might otherwise have.
Oh yeah, no, I love that. And I think things like somebody saying to me, come and sit and do a 2-hour meeting to go through a fact find and fill in all these forms. Like I physically can't, like my brain physically cannot sit and do that. But the outcome of it, the stuff that they're actually trying to build, the stuff that would kind of be very emotional for me and kind of bring stuff to life, I would be all over it. Or give me the input, I'll even do that. Like give me half the work, I would do that myself versus sitting and having a dragged out 2-hour-long conversation. So as you say, it can kind of it could put people off coming to get the advice in the first place, or it could give them a experience that just isn't comfortable for them, and because of the way that they tend to engage, and because there's so much detail in finance, and like should be, but there's a lot.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it kind of my starting point within advising, there's been so much work, first we had sort of the vulnerable consumer element, vulnerable client element, and then we've had consumer duty that's come in and sort of like pushed everyone around. And it kind of, I know for a really long time, it was just all these boring seminars that everyone's like, yes, okay, if someone comes in and says they've just gone through a really nasty breakup or they've just lost their job, yes, of course, I'm going to put that in my fact fund. Of course, I'm going to think maybe they shouldn't be making life-changing decisions at this precipice. But I think it goes so much deeper than that. I know there's definitely a segment of people within practices that are just like, they don't like the change. They don't like having to constantly upskill. Yeah. But for me, it's interesting that people think that a business plan should stay static, especially within financial planning, in the concept that every year we have a review of the client's financial plan because always constantly changing and it's in flux. Yeah. And I think it takes a certain amount of maybe a bit more life maturity to be able to sit in that constant flux and that constant change and not be disturbed by it. But I think if you know fundamentally what you're about and what you're for, then you can handle it, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm the same. I absolutely love all the change in finance, and I would just get so bored otherwise. But that's why everybody. But in terms of finance ed and maybe the complexity around it, or maybe like the misunderstandings about it, or what we've talked about, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about it, what would it be?
If I had a magic wand and could fix one thing in financial services, it would be sharing information. It is such a detriment to the client experience of what the heck is this product? What's it invested in? How long has it been going? All that information that sat on weird legacy systems that haven't been updated, that a scan that someone took when they digitized files and half of the trust deed is missing. I think when I first joined financial services, I was like, this is crazy that the data just isn't there. If it were just the thing of it was easy to get hold of the information of what it is, where it is.
I mean, you could literally just have the cost of financial advice if that was the case, I think, because that's why so much time and energy and effort is lost, isn't it, in just trying to get that. Right, we've got some quick fire questions. You ready? Favourite book?
I'm going to default to a comfort book of mine, which is A Spoonful of Jam, which is a book all about a little girl who is growing up during the Blitz. There's a line in it where she says that, like, her school mistress says that a tidy appearance is a reflection of a tidy mind. Well, my mind must have exploded.
I love that. I'll have to have a look at it. In a similar vein, then, favourite movie?
Fifth Element.
Oh, I like the pace there. This is it. Now we're into quick fire.
I honestly chose that, but I chose that film a long time ago. Have you seen it?
Haven't. No, I don't watch a lot of movies. I also hate that question, so probably shouldn't have put it in. And the last one, we've already got some facts about you, but have you got any interesting or fun facts that we don't know? I feel like you've got a lot, and I just watched your brain process which ones. Which should I? No, not that one. No, not that one.
I will be playing at the World Masters Championships this summer in Nottingham.
What do you play?
Ultimate Frisbee.
Oh, I did know that. Yes, that's amazing.
Yes, I have mixed training every week on Tuesdays. I have worlds training every fortnight on Saturdays. And I have long-suffering friends that will very kindly go out when it's horrible weather and throw frisbees with me.
Podcasting, plus the freelance paraplanning, plus the starting your own business. And, there's not many people make me feel lazy, Hannah, but I think you've managed to do that.
I'll take that.
So thank you so much, Hannah. That has been fab. And I am very much looking forward to seeing your interviews with some of our other lovely incubees and seeing about their experience.
So we're here this week with Tony Pound. How are you doing, Tony?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about where you are at the moment, Tony. What's the kind of situation you're in where we are in the present?
I am now almost, where are we? Sort of like 3 or 4 months in from finally setting up my own practice. So it's been a long time coming, but now I finally kind of got it over the finishing line, if you like, and I now operate under my own brand.
And it's Jouneyhappy Financial Planning, right? So what was the impetus behind the name?
Do you know what? I've had that name in my head for a long time. So I've been given financial advice for over 20 years. And there really was a time where I kind of fell out of love a little bit with financial advice. I'd worked in big corporates and given advice to clients there. And in that time, I'd also then fallen madly into love with health and fitness. And I just had this idea that somewhere along these 3 things, that health, wealth, and happiness it was all aligned. And somebody made a passing comment to me about Jouneyhappy, baby. So that name kind of just was in my mind for a long time. And then came back to financial advice because I worked out that actually I hadn't fallen out of love with financial advice or giving advice. I'd fallen out of love with the corporate world. I wanted to come back into it, but I wanted to do it under my own kind of belief about how I felt financial planning should be done, and that is financial planning and not product sales. And so Jouneyhappy Financial Planning was kind of born. It was a kind of philosophy, if you like. It was a belief for how I felt it should be done. But what it more is now is about this whole idea that, wealth is no good on its own if you don't have the health. And it's and I try to build that into my financial planning.
So turning the clock back, we'll go back to kind of the very early days of you, Tony. But what was it like for you growing up with your relationship to money and what you saw your parents being like?
We didn't really have a great deal of money. My mum was a single mum, bringing up two boys. So, everything was hand-me-downs. Everything was a bit, was different. And we had the classic 50p in the meters and all of that type of thing. We didn't want for too much. We just didn't know what we didn't have. But I think that did kind of educate me a little bit in the sense that I was keen to finish school and get a job and start earning money, because I didn't have any control over any kind of finances.
What was your first job when you finished your education?
Well, do you know what? I went and worked in a local factory, but within an office in the factory. So this factory would fit out supermarkets over the weekends and places like that. When they're fitting them out, they might come up short on one of these brackets. So I was called a progress chaser. I think I was about 17, and I had to go out into the shop floor and ask these guys that have been doing sheet metal pressing for 20, 30 years to break their machine down, put the tool in that I needed, and not make me 100, but could they just do one sheet and go back to doing what they were doing. And they got bonused on the more they did. So you can imagine I was not a popular person trying to get them to do this. But I loved it. But that was my next move, was then into a financial services role.
And what was your first financial services role?
So in Swindon at the time, the biggest employer was Allied Dunbar. So in 1989, I went for an interview there and got a job within the pensions team. My first venture into kind of giving advice was as part of the Zurich Advice Network, but it kind of got me into that world, if you like, dealing with clients. Obviously, coming up to retirement, you'd ring them up and go through your fact find with them, and then provide advice about what to do with the pension pot.
When did you kind of first discover, having fallen into the pension side of things in a life office, when did you discover what it was really like and want to become an IFA?
It is really strange, but as a kid at school, I really believed I was an introvert, and I still believe I'm an introvert. So the idea of being sat down with somebody that I don't know, talking about their life, asking them questions around that, still surprises me that that's where I've ended up. And I think what kind of held me back at the beginning was this idea that that's what it would involve. Seeing new people, that fear of rejection, failing at it, all the classics. So those sort of things were kind of my own self-belief really was limiting the thought of actually doing it.
So in terms of then your business plan, talk me through kind of the evolution of how that went, because obviously with your family commitments.
Well, you can imagine when my partner I think we just had our first baby, and that was when I really knew that I did not want to stay in the corporate world, and I made the move to being self-employed. So that went down the tree, but it was a conversation that we had, and it was really it was tough in terms of finances, but I had one of the reasons I'd made that change because I wanted to be around for my daughter as well. So then therefore there were some real benefits to that. So I wasn't earning, I wasn't earning what I'd been earning before, but I was around more. But it was a constant thought was, okay, am I doing the right thing? Do I go back to being employed? Because I'm not earning the money that I want to be earning, and I need to be earning because I've got a young family. It's hard setting up on your own business, and I probably took a longer time to get to a position where the anxiety had started to move away than a lot of people, because I wanted to do it in a certain way, and there's certain skills that I don't have, and I had to really develop to be able to build a business, not necessarily a financial planning stuff. I've been doing that long enough, and hopefully I've got to a level of decent confidence on that. But running a business and then developing clients is actually, that's really tough.
So at what juncture in your journey towards where you are now did you find out about the incubator program?
So the way I eased myself into self-employed world was to do it under somebody else's brand. And right from the off the agreement, these were my clients that I was building up. So that's always important to everybody who owns a client. So once we'd moved out of the whole lockdown process and I'd survived that without going under, because I thought I was going to at one point, and I was able to come back out into the world and try and build my clients, and good old LinkedIn, made some good relationships there with people within financial services. And that was when it was suggested to me that the Verve would be a good place to get in touch with, because this idea that they would be able to help with that transition in terms of building the business or thinking about who do you set with, and then eventually got a place on one of the cohorts. So and it worked out brilliantly, to be honest. It took me a long time to make a decision from changing from the DA firm that I was working in, and I was enjoying it there. I enjoyed working with them, but it was the next step I wanted to. Who do I then move to? And I took a long time to make that decision. But being part of the Verve Foundation helped that whole thought process.
No, definitely. I think one of the core modules for a lot of people is the discussions around DA, AR, RI, what the different networks are that that program's aware of. And then which one did you go for in the end?
So I went with 2Plan. And I, like I say, I'd been probably over a year from the moment I started talking to them for when I actually made the decision to join them. I've worked in networks before, I tried to be independent and set up as self-employed when I first left the bank, and it didn't work out. Not because of the networks, but because of that classic trying to get clients. And then the initial network that I joined went under. So I'd lost everything. Yeah, that was 6 months after setting up, and lost everything, and then eventually moved back to another network to try and recover that situation. So I'd worked with networks before. I didn't like the idea of going DA because I didn't want everything that went with that, and then sourcing all of those. I like to say to people is they've all got challenges. You just got to work out which challenge you're happy to work with. So everything just kind of felt right. And that for me was why I then joined 2Plan.
To say, it's just about going in, understanding what the challenges are in that landscape. Do you want somewhere where there's going to be a panel so you don't have to worry about it? Or do you desperately want somewhere there's no panel so you have the actual proper whole of market, IFA thing where you can go and choose and you can go and do that kind of piece yourself? But do you want to do your client segmentation by hand? Do you really have the interest in doing that? And are you going to continually do the refresh of it that's going to be needed to keep you on the right side of the track, sort of thing?
And the support is there as and when you need it. And that's certainly my experience. And my business I've been able to grow my business and concentrate on that, rather than having to source all these other bits and constantly thinking about what tech do I need, all of this type things.
There's so much time you can spend doing that as well. But the endless conversations that I had about, this new piece of AI tech stack that's come at us, and kind of, which one should I use? What research tool should I have? And this, that, and the other. I think, definitely one of the big sell points of a lot of the networks is just having that kind of structure already put there for you.
But I haven't got to pay them something and then them something and then something. I just pay one network and they take care of all of that.
So it seems like a lot of your shaping for Jouneyhappy has been a slow kind of granular process of going through different roles, having different experiences, and kind of slow thinking your way through how things have happened, and maybe a couple of perhaps missteps along the way, like you say, having that anxiety.
And I can look back at that now and actually think I really enjoyed that process. Yes, there were some anxiety inducing periods and sleepless nights, but that's all part of that process, because it's obviously got me to where I am now. But I really enjoyed it, and that's including the mistakes, because I'm a hands-on person, and where I learn is by doing. And the mistakes that I've made are just running a business kind of mistakes. Nobody's died, nobody's lost money. It's those sort of mistakes that only you would probably know. If you can stay in it, do it for 3-4 years, then you'll come up over that hill and you're in a stage where you feel like you survived. And it wasn't so long ago, but back end of last year, probably sort of like September, I remember waking up and thinking, I've got a legitimate business now, because I had clients, I had the referrals coming in from those clients, I had other leads coming in. I was doing the work, I was outsourcing the power planning. And it was a real moment for me to think, do you know what, the business is sound now. And then I can kick on from that.
I think we'll probably leave it there, Tony, but thank you so much for spending so much time and giving all that rich detail, and best of luck with Jouneyhappy. I hope the journey is indeed continues to be happy for many, many, many more decades.
Lovely. Thank you, Honey. I've really enjoyed that.
NewIn Podcast, supported by Royal London, the lead sponsor of the Verve Foundation.
So, as the last part of this episode of the podcast, you may know that on the other side of the podcast and the foundation, I'm CEO of Verve, and that is a business that has been built up over the last 17 years. So we just thought it'd be interesting to bring some of our experience of creating and building a business. And joining me to help chat about that is Jo Campbell, COO of Verve. Hi.
Hello. Hello. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about how it was when we first started working together.
Well, we worked together for about 5 years, I think, administrating and doing some power planning for a small IFA firm in our local village. Cathi had left to go on to bigger and brighter things, and we maybe didn't speak for a week while she was doing it, and then spoke pretty much daily ever since. And at the time she said, look, this is getting bigger than maybe I can just handle right now on my own. Would you consider coming? And my husband says he always remembers where we were when I said to him, Cathy's asked me if I would go and join her in the business, brand new fledgling business, you were just self-employed, it wasn't even yet a business really. And he said, well, what do you want? And I said, I want to give it a go. When we started a power planning business, people still didn't know what power planning was. It was very new to the industry. It was right in the middle of a recession. And then put on top of that, people who'd never run a business before went through all of those challenges, and we've grown together, I would say, over that time period.
Absolutely.
Yeah, do you think we're the same people that we were then?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty
Grown in
much.
some ways, but probably regressed in others.
Potentially.
But I think, like, thinking about starting a business, so I always describe myself as an enthusiastic entrepreneur in that I am like just giddily excited, but I recognise that that's not how everybody is wired, and that's just very much the way that I go at it. And then when I'm talking to people starting their own business, they're often more akin to kind of you and where you were at, in the sense of going, well, this is interesting and I think I want to give it a go, but I've got a husband, I've got children, I've got a mortgage, like there's an awful lot to kind of think about. So I guess like from your position there, you weren't necessarily starting the business, but you were joining, it was the same, like you were joining me working in my spare room. Yeah, it was a massive risk. And I guess they'd be in similar shoes. Like, what would you, looking back now, what would you say, I guess, your thought process was at the time, and like, would you do anything differently? Please say no.
I mean, I very much stand by the saying of you regret the things that you don't do. So I am a risk taker. Funnily enough, I stick to adventurous, despite my timeline getting shorter and shorter to retirement.
Just around the corner, isn't it?
It's terrifying. So I think if I hadn't taken that jump, I would have regretted it every day, especially seeing what you've kind of built. But I had a very small child. I did obviously have to consider those risks regardless. It's not my business, but I feel, the blood, sweat and tears have all gone in. But I'm happy to do that, and I think that's meant I would get more, and the business has got more out of something like that than what I would working as a number in a larger company. So.
Yeah, and I think when I speak to people that are coming through the incubator and thinking about it, they're all at that point of like, it's just that almost tipping point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of, I can't mitigate every risk, I can't make sure it's guaranteed to be a success, but like, what's the extra kind of nudge that's just going to get them going?
You'll never be at 100% surety, and you shouldn't be for anything, for any choice that you make. There's always got to be a moment of doubt, which just keeps it slightly level. But I think if you're in a position where you're thinking, I really want to, then you should.
Yeah. So Verve now, there's like 57 employees, and obviously at the beginning there was just you and I. Kind of it was me that had kind of started the business, but you absolutely threw everything into it. Like in the same kind of level of energy and dedication that I would have done, which I think if people are thinking of starting their own business, that first person to come and join them, it's just like such a big leap of faith for them.
I think having somebody who is able to be adaptable, who is able to wear all of those hats and do it quite comfortably is a huge asset. But I also think there's something about having that honesty and integrity and saying, look, this is a small business and this is what I need, and I need a range of skills, because you don't need a full-time administrator, you don't need a full-time paraplanner, you don't need a full-time compliance person. So I think having somebody either who can do all of that or can dip into those things is going to be a actually really crucial in the early days. And I think for us too, we sat and we worked it out together. We were in our little broom closet. We had one phone between us, one computer that didn't work, and we worked, 15-hour days. Our days would fly. Yes, we would do 15 hours, and yes, we'd do 6 days a week. But actually, what you would find is, if anybody walked into that room, we would be laughing about something ridiculous on the radio, or find something amusing in the fact we could never understand somebody's fact find. And I mean, I'm a big advocate of kind of finding the joy in even the smallest of things. And certainly when you're building your own business, the joy is just knowing that it's for you.
There are so many rewards. I started a business going, this is going to be super easy. I'll get to work whatever hours I want. I'll get to have as many holidays as I want, which is ridiculous. It absolutely, 10 years later, got kind of closer to that. But I think for people to recognise, as you said, like those rewards, they come later, don't they? Like that, you're not getting all the holidays you want right at the outset.
And there's just something, it's almost like you have to front load it, like retirement. You have to put all the work in to be able to reap the benefits. I know we talked about it before. You'd only been gone a couple of years, and I'd just barely joined. You had your first holiday in about 3 years, and you only had 1 week. And we were away, and like a day into it, unfortunately, my mum passed away. And I had to call you and say, gosh, this is awkward. And then I took a couple of days, to sort it out. And it was just one of those things of, I was very aware that there was only you and I, and those businesses needed to be kind of still fulfilled. There was clients who needed to be spoken to. There was protection applications in there, things that really cannot be put on hold. And despite it not being my business, it felt very, very much my responsibility. And I think for the same as anybody else taking out a business, you need to understand those risks of, it's not your life at the minute, while you're still getting it up and running, when it's just you, your clients are the new boss.
Yeah.
You're still kind of beholden to them in some way.
The last thing you should have been thinking of, anybody who's gone through what you went through, the last thing they should be thinking of is their work, whether it's their own business, whether they're employee, whether they're employee number 1 or employee number 1,000, it almost shouldn't matter. But as you say, it doesn't all stop, does it? When you're a small business, there's 1 or 2 of you, it doesn't stop. And you're naturally that invested at that point that you can't stop. You can't just go, God, I just won't think about that stuff anymore.
Wouldn't. But it also did help me as well through that. And that's the thing about a business. It's not just an entity. It's not a commercial. It's not a bloody VAT number.
Yeah.
What it is a living, breathing thing that you really get invested in, you really care about. It's certainly much more than, like I say, just a company letterhead.
Yeah, your heart goes into it, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Your heart, your body, your soul, your everything.
Your liver.
It is. I'm only 24. Look how aged I am. Say Verve's done me dirty. But it hasn't. It's been the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah. And, I would suggest anybody getting in at the early stages to either run your own business or to be part of it. So thank you for that. Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
And, we get to drink wine at work. That's not for everyone.
I always talk about, especially in the early years, your highs are super high when you're running a business and your lows are super low. Everything just feels exacerbated 10 times. So I think I see so many people that come through and they start their own business, and I'm so excited for them. But when they get those first knockbacks, and there will be knockbacks, there's always things that don't go to plan, and they just hurt so much. So I think it's right what you say. You need to find those moments of lightness that's just going to offset it, because it will come, but it's absolutely just being realistic about it not all being plain sailing.
And there was a lot of highs, there was a lot of lows. I mean, go on, tell me a little bit about some of the ones that you remember that really stick in your mind.
I just say if we'd pitched for some work with a client, and it might have been a contract that was £500 a month, but it was huge. £500 a month at the time was massive.
Covered your mortgage.
It did, yeah.
And that was all you were aiming for.
My first ever invoice was £75. My first month invoicing was £75. So actually, if I pitched for £500, and then I didn't get it, it was I didn't want to get out of bed for 2 days. It was so
personal.
Dramatically, it was very personal, and it was so dramatically painful. It was hard to kind of see the woods for the trees. It was hard to be able to say, oh, well, actually, that's one knockback, but if I've got 10 out there, some of them will come off. Yeah. It would really, really hit me. And then likewise, I shared a picture that was taken at my boyfriend at the time, his mum's dining table of me trying to be professional, so I had a headshot so that I could send it to CityWire magazine to go alongside an article I'd written for them. I remember driving down to my mum's and the magazine with it in, because it was all printed at the time, so old, was like open on the back seat, like I can literally remember it. So something that is very commonplace now, day to day, like,
I'm
but
sick
at the
of seeing your
time,
face across it, all of them headshots. Yeah.
but at the time, it was that, like, what is now more commonplace was a super high. So I think at some point I had to learn to just try and regulate those emotions a little bit, because it's just too much to wake up every day and go like, my day's going to be the best ever or the worst ever. Like, at some point there had to be not so dramatic.
Yeah.
I would have thought I was always a fairly resilient person based on my upbringing. Like, I don't feel like I had the smoothest of childhoods, and so there was probably some resilience in there, but I think running my own business took that resilience to a different level, or like tested it in a different way. And I think that's where kind of the extremes of the emotions came. But at some point, I think the skin got a bit thicker. Firstly, as a business owner, so then it was like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to, throw a party every time I get an article published. Maybe I don't need to take to my bed for 2 days if I lose a client. But then that journey keeps going. So then later on, as an employer, like learning how to manage people, what works or what doesn't work, and then you take a lot of kind of hits on that side as well. And again, just through that, your skin gets thicker and you can kind of start to be a bit more objective about what's happening to the business versus it all being so deeply personal to you.
Yeah.
But but I feel like I could only get to that through experience.
I
don't think anybody could have told me.
Yeah, you can't.
So having kind of gone through essentially starting a business, because really I don't know how much the first 2 years counted, because I just don't know what I did.
You were very much in your bedroom.
I was,
You actually interviewed me in your bedroom.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure you had pyjama bottoms on. I feel like we've had these big step-ups, haven't we, of, the first time you got an office, so, we didn't have to sit on your bed. That was nice.
Yeah. Got a phone each, got a microphone each.
When we got a phone each was great, because actually something about starting your own business is almost that it's not so much about lying, but it is about to try and explain your skills,
articulating the
your
vision.
Skills, and it's manifesting the vision.
We genuinely had like just 2 desks pushed up against and one phone in the middle, and it'd ring and it'd be like, your turn.
Your turn. You answer it.
Genuinely,
and I'd be like, I'll see if she's free. My gosh, it's that guy again. And
no, she's not free. Sorry, I've checked with her receptionist.
Checked the line. Yeah, sorry. I'm not sure when she'll be back.
Having gone through all of that, if you could start any business now, doesn't have to be in finance, what would it be?
I don't know if I'm still more of a sidekick than I ever am a business leader. And I mean, I know we've talked about it before. We've talked about post-Verve and what we kind of would do and what that looks like. We're not really ones to just go and start taking up knitting or crocheting. So I actually do think there's something still in life in the old dog, post-Verve, but it's probably still going to be a Cathi and Joe conglomerate.
Well, thank you very much for helping me bring in the first, so episode 2, but the first episode from the incubator side.
Lovely.
How exciting.
Great.
Thank you very much to everybody who has joined in and listened and watched. Thank you, of course, to our amazing sponsors for the podcast in terms of Royal London, but all the sponsors that get involved with all of the Verve Foundation. We absolutely love having you on board and being able to do what we do. And look out for episode 3 coming very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're interested in joining one of our advisor programs or being a supporter of our mission, then head on over to vervefoundation.co.uk.